This world is centered around a massive, glowing world tree. It's known as the Huguenot continent, a vast land currently caught in a cycle of destruction. For years, a brutal war has raged between the demon army and the human kingdom. The humans are losing the fight, their defenses barely slowing down the unscathed monsters. But, in the middle of all this despair, a few legends appeared who could still wield lost ancient magics. These were the only ones capable of truly overwhelming the demon horde. The people called them grimoire smiths, heroes like Allan, El, and Raz who can change the tide of battle with a single book. At a human border fortress, the soldiers are desperately firing cannons into the night. Archers on the walls fire flaming arrows, shouting for everyone to keep the monsters from climbing up. One demon takes a blast of fire right to the face. Another gets an arrow buried deep in its eye, smoking from the impact. Even with blood and arrows sticking out of their heads, these things just keep grinning. The fortress is crawling with monsters, and the guards are starting to panic. A demon lunges over the ledge, reaching for a terrified soldier. Suddenly, a hooded teenager named Allan steps forward and opens a heavy book. He whispers the command for a grand reflection. A shield of light slams into the demon, sending it flying back while the soldier watches in total shock. Allan gives a small smile and tells the guy to rest easy because they're safe now. He turns to the rest of the wall, asking the other soldiers if they're doing alright. His companions, an elf named El and a warrior named Raz, jump down to join him. The dazed soldier just stares, unable to stop shaking as he realizes who's just arrived to escort them. Allan acknowledges his team, calling out to El and Raz as they take their positions. The mage tells them it's time to move ahead, and they're both ready to go. El grabs an arrow that starts glowing with a bright green light. The elf draws her bow, wind magic swirling around the shaft in a tight spiral. She takes careful aim as the energy around her intensifies. She lets the shot fly, and a massive gust of wind knocks a whole group of demons off the side of the fortress. Allan has 4 rings on his hand, each glowing with a different colored mana stone. He slots one of the stones into the center of his grimoire to activate a spell. A huge magic circle erupts across the entire battlefield below the wall. He chants the words Stornad Gram, his eyes glowing with power. The air itself turns into a weapon, tossing the demon army around like toys in a storm. Raz stands guard with his massive sword, while El stays back to cover their blind spots. Allan walks right up to the edge of the wall, looking down at the chaos. He taps another stone on the book, charging up for the final blow. Energy starts crackling through the air in violent purple and gold arcs. A bright orb of mana forms above the open pages of the grimoire. A beam of light shoots straight into the night sky, piercing through the clouds. A massive magic circle appears in the sky right above the demon army, and they can only look up in horror. He unleashes the spell Rain de Karavnos. A torrential rain of purple lightning strikes down, vaporizing every demon in its path instantly. El can't help but call the power terrifying as she and Raz shield their eyes from the blinding blast. Allan holds the glowing grimoire as the mana begins to settle. He walks away from the crackling lightning, simply stating that the battle is over. The soldiers are in total disbelief. They couldn't even scratch those demons, yet this kid wiped them out in a second. Looking out from the walls, the entire demon army has been erased in a single blow. They stare at his hair and the lingering light, realizing they're looking at someone legendary. This is the one from the rumors, the White Wolf Grimoire Smith. Allan checks on the dazed survivors, making sure everyone is still in one piece. With the threat gone, a guard suggests they leave the cleanup to the support army. Allan ignores the praise and pulls out a small wooden tag to show the guard. He calmly asks if they can pass through now that the path is clear. The guard is baffled that a mage of his caliber is just carrying a standard travel permit. The sun begins to rise over the fortress as Allan announces their next destination, the Dragon Kingdom. The morning sky is clear, finally free of the demonic energy that choked the air. The fireworks go off to celebrate their victory. The trio starts their trek away from the fortress walls. El groans dramatically, wondering if this mythical primal mana stone they're hunting even exists. Raz is a bit more realistic, doubting they'll find something that powerful just lying around. But the warrior doesn't care. He's following Allan into whatever hell comes next. El just sighs at how serious he's being. Allan keeps a steady pace, and El has to shout for him not to leave her behind. El starts laughing and messing with Raz, who tells her to get away and stop being a nuisance. Allan hears them bickering and cracks a rare, small smile. He calls out to both of them to keep up. The young mage looks back at his friends and says, "It's time to go." They're looking for the very beginning of the world, or so the legends say. The 3 of them walk into the light, officially starting their journey for the primal mana stone. Gemstones mined on this continent come in all shapes and sizes, but the most valuable are mana stones, which hold traces of ancient magic. They're the source of wealth for the elite, while others do the dirty work beneath their feet. Deep in the dungeons, slaves are forced to polish raw ore all day long. Young Allan sits among them, holding a dull, unremarkable stone. A guard grabs him by the head, shouting that his work isn't nearly good enough. He tosses a couple of rough gems aside, calling them literal garbage. Then, he pulls out a high-quality purple stone to show off what they're failing to produce. He tells Allan that if he wants to be useful, he needs to make them shine like this. Allan reaches for the glowing gem, his eyes fixed on the light. He's completely mesmerized, almost like he's in a trance. The guard kicks him back, offended that a slave would dare reach for it. Allan hits the floor hard as the guard stands over him. The man is clearly annoyed by the defiant look in the kid's eyes. He mocks Allan, thinking the boy's getting cocky just because he has some talent. Another kick lands right in Allan's gut. The guard hauls him up by his hair, giving him a new set of chores. Since he loves polishing so much, he's now doing everyone else's work too. The guards head out for the night, ordering the rest to their bunks. One of them gives Allan a mocking pat on the back. Allan asks if he gets to polish more stones for every hit he takes. The guard tells him to get lost, but Allan snaps at him to stay put. He tells the man to hit him more, wearing a terrifyingly eager smile. The guard happily obliges, while an old man watches from the corner. Morning light eventually filters through the bars of the dungeon. Allan wakes up on the cold floor, bruised and exhausted. He thinks about the colors he sees: red, yellow, and a blue he's never encountered before. That blue stone was beautiful, unlike anything he'd ever held. Despite the pain, all he wants is to see more stones like that. The guard kicks the gate open, screaming for them to get moving. A hand reaches out to help the boy up. It's the unnamed elder from the cell, looking at him with concern. Allan is confused. No one ever bothers to talk to him here. As they head to work, the old man sticks by his side. Allan asks him what he could possibly want from someone like him. The mean guard from before shows up to supervise the morning shift. He warns Allan that if he catches him dozing off, there will be hell to pay. Allan picks up a new piece of ore, noticing a strange mix of purple and red. He starts working on it, wondering how it'll look once it's finished. The elder asks what was going through his head during the beating yesterday. He's clearly baffled by the boy's strange request for more pain. Allan just shrugs. He just wanted a chance to polish more stones. The elder looks at the purple stone, admitting he's never seen anything this beautiful in all his years on the streets. Allan thinks back to his life as a starving orphan, when his only goal was making it to the next day. For him, being a slave is hell. But at least he's found a purpose in these mysterious stones. The old man can't understand why the boy would endure such brutal beatings just for some rocks. Allan tells him to mind his own business, clearly annoyed by the constant questioning. He says he simply likes the way the gems look. The elder holds up a dull pebble, asking what exactly he sees in something so plain. But Allan doesn't see plain rocks. He sees glowing, intricate patterns floating deep inside them. Watching that flicker is the only thing that keeps him from losing his mind in this place. The old man's expression shifts. He asks Allan if he can actually see those hidden patterns. He studies the boy, realizing he might have stumbled upon a natural-born prodigy. He tells Allan that what he's looking at isn't just light, it's ancient magic. He explains that these pebbles are actually monastones, gems that harbor primal power. When paired with a tool like a grimoire, they can be used to cast incredible spells. But he reveals a harsh truth. The stones they're polishing here are mostly just low-grade scraps. He describes a whole world filled with powerful gems for every element: wind, fire, and water. Allan is stunned, realizing there's an entire world of beauty far beyond these prison walls. He leans in, begging the elder to tell him where he can find more of them. The old man gives it to him straight. If he wants to see them, he has to get out of this prison first. Suddenly, a heavy kick sends the elder crashing to the floor, while Allan cries out in shock. A cold voice rings out from the shadows, mockingly asking who was talking about escaping. Master Lucas, the Tower Master, steps forward while holding an ornate, glowing grimoire. Allan stares up at the new arrival, mesmerized by the book. It's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. Master Lucas stands in the center of a dark dungeon, holding a massive book as his mages stand guard. They've cornered two prisoners in the shadows, looking down on them with cold indifference. The Tower Master scoffs, surprised they still have the energy to even think about escaping after everything they've been through. Chained up in the corner, a battered Klaus looks over at a young Allan. He spits out a curse at Malik, the man who put them in this hell. Klaus glares up at Lucas, telling him he's got a lot of nerve showing his face here after what he's done. Confused, Allan looks at the man and asks his grandfather if he actually knows him. Lucas cuts in, calling Klaus a traitor who turned his back on the life of a mage. Lucas brushes the comment off with a smirk, calling the boy's question harsh considering their history. He reminds Klaus that they worked side by side as fellow grimoire smiths for over 30 years. Klaus clenches his fist in silence, the weight of that betrayal clearly hitting home. Lucas reflects on how much he used to rely on Klaus's exceptional skills right up until 2 weeks ago when everything changed. He accuses the old man of not only using Allan to steal his book, but also running a secret business, selling illegal mana stones. As the leader of the grimoire smiths, he claims he can't let such a massive violation of their laws go unpunished. Klaus just laughs at the accusation, calling the master a complete hypocrite. Lucas doesn't blink. He tells Klaus that it's his own soft-hearted mindset that led to his incompetent grandson being taken hostage in the first place. He starts boasting about his own power, a genius who can manipulate over 10 types of ancient magic with ease. He stands proud as the maestro of miracles, a man who believes he's transcended the limits of ordinary magic. He looks down at Klaus, telling him he's nothing more than a pathetic old man without that book of his. Klaus spits back a warning, telling him not to lay his filthy hands on the grimoire. Lucas scoffs, questioning if it's even Klaus's book to begin with. He admits he tried to use the Supreme Grimoire and the Jewel to unlock some massive power, but no matter what he did, nothing happened. He realizes he can't activate ancient magic on the same level as his former colleague, which clearly irritates him. In a fit of rage, he tosses them aside like garbage. But as the book and the stone hit the ground, they begin to sparkle with a strange light. Allan stares at them, mesmerized. Just looking at the artifacts makes him feel a restless energy bubbling up inside him. His vision shifts, and it feels like the items are calling out to him from across the room. In his mind's eye, everything else fades away, leaving only the glowing book and the stones at the center of the universe. Lucas turns back to Klaus, concluding that if his strength doesn't come from these tools, it has to be something else. He leans in, focusing his gaze entirely on Klaus's eyes, searching for a secret he's missing. He demands that Klaus spit it out. How exactly is he able to see the true power within the mana stones? Losing his temper, Klaus lunges forward and grabs the defenseless man. The guard delivers blow that sends Klaus flying backward into the stone wall. Allan screams out for his grandfather, but the other mages hold him back, forcing him to watch the brutality. Klaus looks up weakly, taunting Lucas by asking if a man like him would even be able to see the power even if he were told about it. Lucas sneers, telling him he has cloudy eyes tainted by greed, refusing to believe there's any special sight involved. He grabs the old man by the hair, dragging him up to mock his arrogance one last time. He decides then and there that he'll use both of them as test subjects until they die, all to uncover that hidden power. He picks up the grimoire, leaving Klaus broken on the floor as the mages look on with twisted amusement. He vows to make their power his, no matter the cost or how long it takes. Lucas turns away, his mind set on his new experiments. He picks up a torch, a dark oath forming in his mind. If he can't use these tools to his advantage, he decides they shouldn't exist at all. He looks back with a sinister grin, wanting to make sure the prisoners never even dream of escape again. Klaus yells for him to stop as his captors restrain him, but his pleas fall on deaf ears. Lucas drops the Supreme Grimoire and the glowing mana stones into a pit of roaring fire. As the artifacts are consumed by the flames, Allan's purple eyes begin to glow with an intense light, reacting to the sudden surge of magic. Allan lunges forward into the pit, catching the mages and Master Lucas completely off guard as he dives toward the fire. He's instantly swallowed by the roaring inferno, his face twisted as he endures the searing heat of the flames. His purple eyes lock onto the falling objects. He can see it, the mana stone is reacting to the fire in a way it shouldn't be. Klaus screams out in a panic, telling the kid to grab the book before it's lost to the furnace forever. Allan doesn't hesitate, reaching deep into the center of the pit as a brilliant light begins to erupt from within the flames. Lucas is baffled by the boy's reckless behavior, shouting at him to stop meddling in things far beyond his understanding. The boy's eyes flash with a new, terrifying intensity. He glares back at the master, telling him to stay out of his way. With a surge of desperation, he finally closes his hand around the book, barely able to believe he actually reached it in time. He stands tall amidst the raging fire, clutching the glowing grimoire while the flames swirl around him like a protective barrier. Klaus watches in total disbelief, realizing that the boy has just done something that should have been physically impossible. Allan looks down at his own hands, equally shocked by the overwhelming power that's suddenly coursing through his entire body. Allan, chained up and dressed in rags, feels a searing heat building up deep in his soul. As he stares ahead, his eyes start to glow with a sharp, otherworldly light. A massive, fiery core of mana pulses in front of him, making him feel like he can finally do anything. The mage in the black robes can't believe what he's seeing, shouting in pure shock. He never expected a mere slave to suddenly awaken as a legendary grimoire smith. Gritting his teeth, he demands that Allan hand over the book immediately. Allan clutches the grimoire to his chest, knowing he has to keep it away from this guy at all costs. The mage sneers at him, summoning swirling water as he tells the boy to remember his place. He casts a powerful spell called Aqua Devold, sending a massive wave directly toward the boy. A huge whirlpool of water slams into Allan, threatening to wash him away in an instant. An explosion of energy and light erupts from the impact, filling the entire room with steam. But Allan holds his ground, realizing he can actually control the flames flickering around him. The mage is stunned to see the kid is already manipulating magic like a seasoned pro. Allan charges forward through the chaos, his body wreathed in protective, glowing fire. His special eyes flare as he taps into his high compatibility with the ancient magic in the book. He leaps through the air with insane speed, keeping a tight grip on the grimoire. The antagonist tries to dismiss him as a lucky rookie, but he's struggling to even keep up. Even as he prepares his next move, he realizes Allan's talent is way beyond his expectations. Allan spins through the air, narrowly dodging a barrage of sharp water spikes. Nearby, a bearded old man is being restrained by another mage, while he tries to reach out to the boy. Allan knows his only chance is to get that grimoire to the old man as fast as possible. The mage summons a massive sphere of water, looking down on Allan with total contempt. He looks ready to finish things once and for all, treating the boy like nothing more than a nuisance. But Allan doesn't back down, diving headfirst into the very center of the magical storm. He slams his hand onto the grimoire, forcing its hidden power to erupt in a blinding blast. The collision of fire and water creates a thick fog of steam that covers the entire room. Using the distraction, Allan throws the mana stones toward the old man with a desperate shout. A massive burst of white light swallows the scene as the two magics clash one last time. Allan collapses onto the cold stone floor, his body completely drained from the effort. The bearded man catches the stones, telling the mage that his advantage ends right here. But the villain just smirks, clearly having a sick backup plan he's been waiting to reveal. He pulls back the curtain to show a group of kidnapped children huddled in the shadows. The old man stares in absolute horror, realizing the kind of monster he's actually dealing with. Allan spots strange, glowing black stones embedded right into the children's shoulders. The mage grabs one of the kids, explaining that he created this horrific system just to win. He holds up a special jewel, bragging about the power he's harvested from these innocent victims. The kids sit there with hollow eyes, victims of a process that clearly broke their spirits. The old man is sickened, unable to believe anyone would resort to such twisted human experimentation. Allan watches the scene unfold silently, a cold fury beginning to settle over him. The mage doesn't feel a shred of guilt, claiming he only ever sought absolute power. Allan's expression turns grim, his eyes reflecting the dark, tragic reality of the room. The villain stands over his victims, declaring they should feel honored to serve his sublime research. Master Lucas and the villain both stare in total disbelief at the sheer magnitude of power being unleashed by the young boy. Dark magical energy swirls from the villain's grimoire, while massive flames erupt, surrounding the children who are trapped in the center. At the center of the inferno, young Allan looks at his glowing hands, finally beginning to understand the terrifying nature of his magic. Klaus is on his knees, clutching a grimoire for dear life, while the vortex of fire swirls dangerously close above him. The villain laughs with a twisted manic smile, relishing the moment he's waited for his entire life. He declares he'll use both Klaus and the newly awakened brat as his test subjects, leaving nothing but bone and ash behind. Allan stares at the glowing purple stone in his palm, feeling its incredible resonance with his own soul. He knows he has to replicate what he did earlier to have any chance of surviving this nightmare. Remember, he whispers to himself, focusing on the sparkling patterns that dance before his eyes in the flames. He grips the stone tightly, refusing to spend another day as a victim in this hellhole. His face hardens with a dark determination, his mind set on finding a way to reach the world outside. With a sudden surge of will, he calls out to every mana stone in existence, his power flaring with a violent purple light. Dark energy tendrils whip around him as he stands in the heart of the magical storm, looking like a different person entirely. Allan looks directly at the sweating villain, his eyes cold and filled with hate as he commands the entire facility to burn to ashes. Malik can't believe his eyes. This kid is pulling off ancient magic without even touching a grimoire. Allan doesn't care about the rules anymore. He just wants to see everything burn to the ground. The old mage starts sweating. He wonders if Allan is actually forcing the mana stones into a total meltdown. Malik tries to reach for his own power, but his grimoire isn't responding the way it should. He screams at Allan, calling him nothing but a lowly slave as the magical backlash starts to hit. Allan lets it rip, and a massive explosion of fire and smoke fills the room. The magic is completely out of control now, snaking through the air like living shadows. Allan is barely standing, but he's still pushing through the chaos to finish the job. The other guards and prisoners watch from a distance, absolutely terrified of the power on display. Malik is panicking. He's barking orders at anyone nearby to do something about the slave. The soldiers rush towards him. Allan shouts at the elder to keep moving and handle anyone trying to block their path. He also tells him to like the video. The whole place is basically turning into an oven. Walls are crumbling and everything is on fire. Some of the men get caught in the crossfire and go down screaming. Malik is finally starting to realize that he's in serious trouble. The elder helps the others up, telling them it's time to get out while they still can. They scramble through the burning ruins, trying to stay ahead of the falling debris. Malik can't handle the embarrassment. Being beaten by a kid he considered property is killing his pride. He keeps telling himself that this has to be impossible. He reaches out, trying to stabilize the magic, but the whole thing just shatters around him. He gets hit point blank by a massive surge of energy that tears through the floor. He's still cursing Allan with his last breath, telling him to just die already. Allan gets swallowed up by a vortex of dark mana as the basement starts to collapse. But it doesn't work. The power just implodes on itself, leaving nothing behind. Allan looks him in the eye and tells him to stay out of his way. He's done playing games. The mage collapses, completely spent and defeated on the floor. The elder watching Allan is stunned. He knew the kid was special, but taking down a pro like Malik is another level. Allan looks back at the old man. He wants to know if they can actually hold this guy accountable for what he did. He's still got that look in his eye, even though the fight is over. The elder says they need to get to the surface first, before they worry about anything else. Allan's hand is glowing, probably from the strain of holding onto that mana stone. He's reaching his limit though. His legs start to give out as the adrenaline fades. The old man catches him and tells him to hang in there. They're almost out. They finally break through to the outside. The sun is actually hitting them for the first time in forever. Allan can barely believe it. He's actually standing in the open air. But the peace doesn't last long. A group of mages and guards show up immediately to block their path. They're yelling that Allan is the one who set the mansion on fire. Fast forward to a courtroom. Allan is standing there in chains, looking exhausted and beat down. The prosecutor starts laying out the charges. Burning down the estate of a lord like Malik is a heavy crime. The judge doesn't waste any time. He looks down from his high bench and delivers the verdict. The crowd is loving it, shouting for blood from the stands. Allan gets sentenced to death. He just stands there, taking it all in with those purple eyes. Just as the final sentence is being read, a powerful voice booms through the hall. Someone is filing a formal objection. The entire courtroom is stunned. It's the maestro of miracles himself, Lord Klaus. Everyone starts whispering. They can't believe a man of his legendary status would bother showing up to a slave's trial. Klaus doesn't hold back, telling the court that passing judgment on a kid just because he's a slave is a huge mistake. Master Lucas, the tower master sitting on the throne, admits it's been a long time since he last saw Klaus. Lucas insists the death penalty is justified for a slave, and wants to know why Klaus is sticking his neck out for a nobody. Klaus delivers the ultimate shocker. He looks at Allan and tells the court that the boy is actually his apprentice. The entire room erupts in a frenzy. The idea of a slave awakening magic and being trained by a legend is completely unheard of. Klaus pulls out a grimoire and a mana stone, offering them to Allan, right in front of the judge. Allan grips the glowing stone, finally understanding what he needs to do to survive. He realizes that, to get these people to actually listen, he has to show them he's a mage, not a piece of property. Despite the chains, Allan stands tall and looks the crowd in the eye. He's ready to show everyone who the real villain is. Master Lucas strokes his beard, suggesting that if the boy really is a grimoire smith, they should at least listen to what he has to say. The king looks down from his throne, skeptically noting that he's never heard of a slave awakening as a grimoire smith. The nobles in the stands erupt in protest, arguing that such a rare gift only appears in a tiny handful of people each year. Ignoring the chatter, Allan reaches out and presses his hand against a glowing purple mana stone embedded in his grimoire. Swirls of brilliant blue water magic erupt from the book, spiraling around the center of the hall. Allan looks on calmly as the water flows around him, proving his power is the real deal. A noble in a top hat leaps to his feet, shouting that there must be a mistake and refusing to believe a slave could have such talent. Master Lucas remains silent while Allan keeps his head down, clearly uninterested in the noble's rambling. With a flick of his wrist, Allan sends the water magic whipping through the air, telling the crowd they're starting to get on his nerves. The sudden surge of magic startles the audience as water splashes near the stands. Allan mutters about how tired he is of hearing people go on about bloodlines, while looking down on everyone else. He stares up at the nobles, asking if they think being a grimoire smith makes them special enough to get away with murder. The man in the top hat is stunned into silence, insisting that the law would never permit such a crime. Allan gives a cold smirk, surrounded by his dancing water magic, and says there's someone in the room who deserves to be punished way more than he does. His hat gets snatched by the water. The drip is not real anymore. Clenching his fist, Allan points out Malik as the one who tried to kill him, and Master Lucas, accusing him of sacrificing children for human experiments. The king looks over, his expression turning serious as he hears the name. Master Lucas places a firm hand on Allan's shoulder, confirming to the court that every word the boy said is the truth. The old man tells the king to search the basement of Malik's mansion, where they'll find unburned evidence made of stone. A grim memory shows a group of children in chains, their bodies covered in strange dark marks from Malik's experiments. Allan looks up at the throne, asking if the country is really going to execute him just for being a slave after hearing all that. Surrounded by swirling water, he makes it clear that he'll fight with everything he has to get out of there if he has to. He and Master Lucas stand side by side, a united front against the skeptical court. The magic continues to flow around them, creating a barrier of water that underscores Allan's resolve. The king closes his eyes for a moment, weighing the evidence. He suddenly stands and throws out his arms, declaring the trial over and ordering his knights to raid Malik's estate immediately. Turning to Master Lucas, the king warns him to keep a close eye on his new apprentice and never let him out of his sight. Master Lucas bows respectfully as they prepare to exit the grand hall. Later that evening, Allan stretches his arms toward the sunset, finally feeling the weight of the chains leave him. Now dressed in a simple tunic, Allan looks back at Master Lucas, who notes how much better he looks without the slave rags. Master Lucas is a bit miffed when Allan calls him old man, while Allan asks if he's actually a powerful mage like everyone says. They walk through the city streets, and Master Lucas corrects him, saying he's a grimoire smith, and insisting Allan call him Master from now on. Allan doesn't miss a beat, immediately asking where the magic stones are, and what he needs to pack for their journey. Master Lucas tells him to settle down, but Allan is already excited, wondering if they can just live off the land in the forest. The old man sighs at his impatience, reminding him that he's officially his apprentice now. He tells Allan he's going to have to learn the fundamentals of being a grimoire smith from scratch, much to the boy's disappointment. Master Lucas explains that the world isn't safe for travel, pointing out that demons from the west are attacking neighboring countries. He shows Allan a map marked with red arrows, illustrating the scale of the demonic invasion. He warns Allan that wandering off alone without any real way to defend himself is just a death sentence. Despite the warning, Allan stops in his tracks and insists that he still wants to go out and find the stones. He looks at Master Lucas with pure determination, reminding him that he was the one who said a world of adventure existed. Master Lucas delivers a quick bop to Allan's head with a wooden ruler, telling him that's exactly why he needs to master his craft first. Master Lucas explains that if Allan really wants to find those magic stones, he's got to start by hitting the books. He goes on about properties and classifications, telling the kid that his whole perspective will shift once he actually understands the magic he's dealing with. He points out that becoming a grimoire smith at the magic tower will give him everything he's currently missing: authority, power, and real knowledge. Plus, having the entire weight of the magic tower backing him up is an advantage he can't afford to ignore. The old man promises that this is the only way Allan will ever be able to live exactly how he wants in this world. Allan stares at a glowing gem in his hands, finally seeing a clear path toward the freedom he's been craving. He weighs his options for a second, and then simply says, "Alright." Since the old man is so insistent, Allan agrees to give this magic tower thing a shot. But he's not making a permanent commitment. He warns his new master that if he feels like his time is being wasted, he's out. He points to himself with a smug grin, saying he'll hit the road and start his own journey the second he gets bored. Master Lucas just chuckles and figures that's a fair enough deal. With the sun setting over the city, he officially welcomes Allan to the magic tower. And just like that, the legendary institution gains its newest and probably most headstrong grimoire smith. It's Allan's first day at the magic tower. He takes in the view, thinking about how this place is both the kingdom's shield and a massive research hub. Master Lucas walks with him, explaining that the smiths here are either working for the state or deep in their own research. They look down at the Great Hall, which is basically the brain of the whole operation. The master tells Allan he's already cleared things with the staff, so he just needs to go upstairs for final registration. He's got other business to handle, so he can't go any further with him. He gives Allan a nod of encouragement, telling him to do his best. Allan starts to climb, but the staircase is brutal. He's already starting to regret taking the stairs. He finally reaches the top and spots a counter, hoping he's in the right place. His jaw drops when he sees what's inside. It's a massive wall that looks like a giant open book, and it's completely dwarfing everyone in the room. Other mages are busy interacting with the floating symbols on the pages. Allan's just standing there, trying to process what he's seeing. A receptionist pops up out of nowhere, startling him, as she asks if he's Allan. She's been expecting him since the tower master gave her a heads up. She gets him all registered and officially welcomes him to the tower. She hands him a pendant, explaining it's an apprentice ID made from a water attribute mana stone. She adds that higher ranks come with way better pay and authority. Allan's eyes light up, and he asks if there are any missions he can take right away. She points back to the giant wall, calling it Memoria. It stores every record since the tower was founded. She tells him to just place his hand anywhere on it to get started. The wall glows as soon as he touches it, recognizing him instantly. It asks him to state his business. The receptionist mentions he can also use voice commands to browse through the missions. Allan tells the system he wants to accept one. A list of available tasks appears on the screen. She starts explaining the rules, noting that apprentices usually have to pair up with higher ranked mages. She points out a specific mission the master assigned to him, but Allan's already focused on something else, an Orvane investigation. She panics, telling him that's the kind of mission only graduating apprentices should even look at. Before she can stop him, the mission is already accepted. She's losing it, screaming that it's way too dangerous, even if he is being supervised by Master Lucas. Allan doesn't see the problem. If it's on the list, he figures he's allowed to do it. She asks if he's even met his partner yet, looking totally stressed. She explains that his partner is the master's sole apprentice and a legend in his own right. Another girl joins the conversation, gushing about how he reached intermediate rank in record time. They're both fangirling hard now, calling this guy an absolute genius. Apparently, the master hadn't taken an apprentice in decades before this guy. They're convinced he's the only one worthy of inheriting the master's secret research. While the girls swoon, other mages nearby start gossiping about Allan being a slave. Allan ignores the chatter, looking at the mission slip and wondering what kind of guy this Lucas is. He finds the two-person team thing a bit annoying, but he turns the handle and heads out. Allan knows he just has to grit his teeth and bear it until his rank finally goes up. Inside, a blonde guy is absolutely losing it over how messy the place got while he was gone. He's frantically trying to tidy up, wondering why no one can put things back where they belong. The blonde guy grumbles about someone leaving important documents just lying around on the floor. He stops when he notices someone else has walked into the room. He realizes it's Allan, the new guy he was told to expect. The senior apprentice introduces himself as Lucas Fallen, welcoming Allan to the team. Allan is a bit taken aback by how intense this guy is. Lucas asks if he's already been briefed on their upcoming mission. He tells Allan to relax, promising to guide him through everything since it's his first time out. He's happy to answer any questions Allan might have. Allan hands over a paper, casually mentioning that he actually picked out a different mission for them. Lucas looks at the slip and freezes, asking if he's really talking about the mine in the southern forest. He can't believe an official seal was actually granted for such a dangerous location as a first assignment. Allan doesn't seem to care about the risk, just wanting to know when they're leaving. Lucas sighs, explaining that if they take the morning carriage, they can be there in a couple of hours. He sets the departure for tomorrow morning, but Allan is already walking away. Lucas is left behind, screaming about how he just finished cleaning up the mess Allan made. Allan walks off, thinking that Lucas seems like a nice enough guy. Lucas is still busy sorting through reference materials for their trip. Allan, meanwhile, plans to grab every useful book he can find while he has the chance. He knows success on this mission will earn him the right to participate in the grimoire selection ceremony. His eyes are full of determination. He's ready to start this journey as soon as possible. Allan wakes up at a library desk buried under piles of research. He blinks away the sleep, realizing he drifted off while working. Across the room, Raz is already busy scanning the tall bookshelves for more materials. On the table sits a glowing purple jewel encased in a gold, winged frame. Raz looks back from the shelves and asks if he's the one who woke him up. Allan shakes his head, still a bit groggy as they get back to business. Raz holds up the jewel, letting the light catch the golden details. The stone's radiance is captivating, drawing Allan's full attention. Raz explains that the ancient magic within is usually invisible to everyone except high-level mages. Allan notices something peculiar about the gold framing the jewel. He points out that the frame structure seems different than the usual designs. Raz hums in thought, considering the observation. Allan compares two stones, noting their similarities despite the settings. Raz explains that the borders are specifically designed to distinguish attribute jewels from derivatives. Allan repeats the terms, wanting to understand the magic system better. These magic stones are essentially conduits for ancient power. Raz explains they have to be processed first, so a human can actually use them. He goes on to say the magic inside determines which category they fall into. The wing decorations mark attribute jewels, which control natural elements like fire and water. He identifies the plant-themed decoration as a derivative jewel. These handle unique effects, like sharpening, hearing, or seeing through solid walls. Allan examines the slots in a grimoire, seeing how they match the specific jewel types. The pages are filled with intricate circuits, designed to pull power from the stones. He asks if the circuits are the key to drawing magic out, and Raz confirms it. For any mage, these books are the only way to harness that ancient energy. Raz leans over the desk, his expression turning serious. He tells Allan that for a user, the grimoire is practically as important as their own life. Allan recalls Master Lucas being incredibly protective of his own book. A grimoire that fits its owner perfectly can draw out massive amounts of power with ease. Allan stares at the book, wondering if a simple tool can really be that influential. He looks down at a reward notice, granting him entry into the grimoire selection. Raz tells him to pack up the jewels, acknowledging the reckless path he took to get here. Allan looks at the book, feeling like he's finally found a reliable partner for his journey. The next morning, a carriage carries them away from the tower. They reach the southern forest and wave goodbye to their transport. Raz grumbles about the mud while Allan checks his gear. They arrive at a mining village, but it's completely silent. Not a single person is walking the streets or working the stalls. They head deeper into the town, passing by boarded up windows and empty crates. Raz kneels down to check the path leading toward the mines. Something fast tears through the silence, kicking up debris. A four-eyed wolf with a red jewel on its forehead leaps out with a snarl. Raz points out the demonic beast they're here to hunt, and asks Allan if he's got his grimoire ready. Allan gives him a short, firm answer. From high above, you can see a whole pack of those four-eyed creatures surrounding the pair in the village square. Allan looks at his open book, going over the jewels they lent him for the mission fire, water, and earth. Raz thinks fire would be the fastest way to wipe them out, but the risk of burning down the village is too high. He tells Allan to stay close so he can look after him while things get messy. Allan's grimoire begins to glow with an intense power as he tells Raz he appreciates the concern, but he's got this. He flashes a confident smirk, looking more than ready to handle himself. Allan drops into a crouch, his magic circle flaring on the ground as Fran steps up behind him. Wolves are closing in, but Allan's only thinking about the core jewels he's about to harvest. He puts his hands to the earth and whips up a massive cloud of sand to blind the pack. One lunges, but Allan slides right under it as a blast of mana shreds the beast's core. Fran watches the dust settle, keeping his own grimoire open and ready. Allan explains that, according to his books, smashing that core stone is the only way to kill these things. Fran admits he's impressed. He can see why Allan was picked as the master's apprentice. He tells the kid to show off what else he's got as the next wave charges in. The two mages sync up their spells, creating a whirlwind of mana that tears through the monsters. Once the immediate area is clear, they take a quick second to regroup. Their focus shifts when they spot a villager in serious trouble further down the path. A lone guard is pinned down, desperately trying to keep a wolf's teeth away from his neck. Allan sprints toward them, but the distance is just too great. Fran catches him by the collar, telling him to hold on tight to his book. He chants a wind spell, preparing to launch them across the village in one shot. A massive gale lifts them both off the ground like they're weightless. They soar over the rooftops, zeroing in on the guard's location from above. Allan flips through his grimoire midair, timing his next move for the landing. Pillars of earth erupt from the dirt, knocking the wolves back just as the guard loses his footing. The two mages land gracefully, right in front of the survivor. The guard can't believe he's actually saved, but Fran tells him to move to safety while he still can. The relief doesn't last long. A massive parent wolf steps out from the shadows. This one is way bigger than the others, and it looks twice as hungry. Allan notices something strange. A faint golden glow pulsing inside the monster's red core. He asks Fran if there's any way to beat a demon without actually destroying the stone. His eyes pick up details no normal mage could see, identifying a light similar to a mana stone. Fran stares at the same spot but doesn't see anything out of the ordinary. Allan wonders if he's the only one who can see this weird connection. He decides he has to get his hands on that stone intact to find out. He starts planning how to stop the beast's movement, leaving Fran a bit confused. Fran asks one more time if he really sees a light in there. Looking at Allan's face, he realizes the kid isn't lying. Fran sighs and gives in. If Allan's that sure, he'll back him up. He tells Allan he'll provide the restraint, while Allan goes for the surgical strike. Fran begins weaving his mana, creating swirling wind currents around the target. He calls out a binding spell, locking the parent wolf in a cage of air. Allan drops to his knees, visualizing the ground beneath the monster's paws. While Fran keeps the wolf pinned, Allan's circle starts glowing with an intense light. He grinds the earth into fine sand before flooding the area with a massive surge of water. The mix turns into thick, heavy mud that traps the beast's legs like wet cement. With the target stuck, Fran prepares a focused wind blade for the finishing blow. The sharp gale connects, aiming right for the base of the core stone just as Allan planned. Fran is stunned. His wind blade bounced right off the monster's hide without leaving a scratch. He realizes the base of that core stone is just too tough for a standard wind attack to penetrate. Allan stares at the beast, trying to figure out a way to break through something that even a blade like that couldn't touch. He shouts up at Fran, telling him to use that same wind attack one more time. He knows that if they want to cut through, they're going to need to add some serious heat to the mix. Fran trusts the kid and opens his grimoire, summoning a massive magic circle above the battlefield. He's caught off guard as he feels fire mana suddenly surging into his wind currents. Allan concentrates, forcing his fire magic to fuse with Fran's gale and push the temperature to the limit. He screams out for the flame to take hold as the spell transforms into something entirely new. Fran follows through with the strike, letting the superheated blade fly. The combined attack hits with surgical precision, severing the core stone and blasting it clean off the monster's head. Fran looks over with a proud grin, thrilled that their gamble actually paid off. Allan catches the glowing red jewel in his hands, finally holding the prize he worked so hard to harvest. Fran is still riding the high of their victory, genuinely impressed that they managed to pull it off. In his head, he's already ranking Allan's skills alongside intermediate-level grimoire smiths. Being able to sync magic on the fly like that is no small feat. It takes a specific kind of natural talent. He looks at the kid and sees a literal prodigy in the making. He can't help but chuckle at the fact that he ended up with such a powerhouse for a junior. Allan just stares at the glowing red stone in his hand, looking a bit dazed. He suddenly perks up, pointing out a golden light inside the core that he's sure is there. Fran leans in but sees nothing special, noting that the light is way weaker than what you'd find in a real mana stone. Allan's eyes stay locked on the core, searching for that faint glow. Fran gives up and puts it away, deciding it's a question for the master once they get back. Allan wonders if he can tap into that ancient magic and turn the whole thing into a weapon. A group of guards comes running up, waving their arms to signal that everything's clear. Fran confirms the demon's been dealt with and immediately checks if any villagers were hurt. Allan stays quiet, glancing back toward the dark mouth of the cave with a sharp look. He could have sworn he heard a voice calling out to him just a second ago. He stands alone at the entrance, staring into the pitch-black tunnel. Fran's voice snaps him out of it as he puts a hand on Allan's shoulder to get his attention. He tells him they need to double-check the jewels and his book before they move on to the mine. Allan nods, but he keeps looking over his shoulder as they start walking away. They eventually reach a quiet house in the village nearby. A family reunites right in front of them, the little girl and her mother hugging the guard who just made it back. Inside, Fran finishes his inspection and confirms there are no issues with the grimoire or the jewels. He explains the protocol. Whenever a new ore vein is found, they have to inspect it on site to verify if there are mana stones. Allan gets hyped, imagining a cave filled with massive, high-grade stones. Their path is suddenly blocked by an old man who's absolutely adamant about them staying out of the mine. He's panicked, shouting that they're going to anger Lord Aonuma even more than they already have. Fran and Allan can only stare, having no clue who this guardian might be. The elder explains that this forest guardian has been living in the mine since ancient times. His son tries to calm him down, but the old man blames the demon attack on the younger generation's lack of worship. Fran just keeps walking, telling him they're just there to do their jobs, while the son takes the chance to lead his dad away. They head into the dim mine, Allan curious about what this phantom beast thing actually is. Fran explains they're rare creatures that don't fit into the category of animals or demons. It's a weird concept for Allan to wrap his head around. Fran adds that their bodies are literally made of mana stones, which immediately piques Allan's interest. According to the legends, they live for over 1,000 years and have total control over ancient magic. Because they're so rare and powerful, most people end up worshipping them like gods. He admits it's unlikely they'll find an unregistered one just hanging out in a mine like this. He reminds Allan that these things are essentially deities. Legends say they even granted special gifts to mages they took a personal liking to. There are old documents that mention it, but Fran treats it more like a fairy tale than historical fact. Allan goes quiet, mulling over the idea of a god that hands out gifts to humans. He's already trying to picture what a creature made of solid mana stones would even look like. Allan keeps pace with Fran as they make their way further into the depths of the mine. He stops for a second, sensing something powerful radiating from the rock face. They finally hit the mother lode, a massive vein of glowing blue crystals embedded deep in the cave walls. Allan is totally mesmerized, reaching out to touch the smooth surface of a stone and marveling at its beauty. He remembers his training, asking if people who can't see mana have to use tools to find these things, and Fran confirms he's spot on. But then, a sharp pain spikes through his head as his eyes react violently to a sudden surge of energy. That magnetic pull from before hits him again, dragging him toward the center of the vein like a literal vacuum. He shouts as he's yanked off his feet, Fran reaching out too late as a rift swallows him whole. He tumbles through a pitch-black void, falling deeper into the mountain than he ever thought possible. He hits the floor with a hard thud, the air leaving his lungs as he rolls to a stop. When he finally looks up, he's greeted by a sight that's almost too bright to believe. He's found a hidden cavern overflowing with pure mana stones, and the sheer amount of power in the room is staggering. Fran's down in the pit, shouting up to see if Allan is still alive. Meanwhile, Allan is lost in a sea of blue, noticing the colors getting deeper as he drifts. Then, this massive whale spirit with glowing horns just drifts into view. Allan's totally stunned, wondering if he's looking at a real living creature. The whale starts talking, telling him that his scent feels nostalgic. It tells him to chill out, calling itself an old-timer that doesn't mean any harm. Allan realizes the words aren't coming from a voice they're echoing in his head. He notices the beast's body isn't flesh. It's made of pure mana stones. When he asks if it's a phantom beast, it admits it was called that once. Allan's in disbelief. These things are supposed to be godlike legends he'd never meet. The beast notices Allan's eyes, calling them special for seeing the true world. It says it hasn't seen anyone with that kind of vision for hundreds of years. Allan watches as golden light starts swirling around his hands. The spirit identifies it as ancient magic, confirming his suspicions. It explains that his eyes are meant to see magic that's been trapped in ore since ancient times. It tells him this ability is a treasure given only to those loved by the world. Allan's a little confused about what loved by the world even means. He reaches out to touch it, and it feels like a cool, heavy flow of water. He can't help but smile, thinking about how beautiful these beasts really are. The spirit says it'll definitely brag about him to the 7-star kings. It explains that those kings are the peak of all ancient life. Talking this much after so long is starting to make the beast tired. It tells Allan it's time for it to head back to sleep now. Allan's not ready to let it go, asking where the kings are and what ancient magic is. The beast just calls him a beloved child and tells him not to worry. It promises that his destiny will cross paths with the kings soon enough. Allan's left alone for a second, wondering about the source of magic. The spirit tells him to hold out his hand for a final gift. It offers a modest blessing of some pretty complex magic. It's a lot of power, but the beast trusts that Allan can handle it. A huge, glowing, blue mana stone suddenly materializes in his hands. The beast's voice fades, saying he'll definitely reach the primal mana stone. Allan stares at the gem as the whole blue dimension starts to flicker. He tries to shout for it to wait, but everything's dissolving into bright light. Allan snaps back to reality in the cave, blinking hard as the glow from the stone hits him. Fran comes running through the dark, relieved that he finally found him. Allan looks around, still dazed and wondering about that blue world. He can feel the beast's presence fading as it goes to sleep deep in the mine. Fran stops cold, his eyes glued to the massive blue gem Allan's holding. Fran asks what the hell that is, and Allan tries to say it's a blessing from a phantom beast. He stammers that it's a scale or something, but Fran just looks lost. Allan has no idea how to explain any of this, so he just stands there awkwardly. Back at the magic tower, Master Lucas is looking over the hall. He's pretty impressed that they managed to bring back a demon's core and a gift from a literal phantom beast. He notes that these stones are on a whole different level compared to the stuff they usually mine. He asks Fran about the mission report, but the guy admits he hasn't even started it yet. Lucas tells him to just handle the basic mission details. He'll take care of reporting the sensitive stuff like the phantom beast and the rare stones to the higher-ups himself. The master turns his attention back to Allan, who's still totally mesmerized by the glowing blue stone. Since the beast gave it to him personally, Lucas decides Allan should be the one to polish it and turn it into a proper jewel. He even tells Allan he can use the demon's core for his research while he gets the polishing tools ready. Allan's basically glowing with excitement. While they wait for the tools, Lucas tells Fran to go finish that report and suggests Allan go pick out a grimoire. Fran wonders if Allan is even listening at this point. He definitely is. Allan doesn't waste a second, grabbing Fran and bolting for the library. Fran's caught completely off guard as he's dragged away at high speed. They finally make it to the desk to check in. Allan's heart is pounding. This is the moment he's been waiting for since day one. They stand before a pair of massive, ornate doors that lead to the tower's inner sanctum. As the heavy doors start to creak open, Allan peers inside, eyes wide with anticipation. He steps into a library that's absolutely massive, filled from floor to ceiling with ancient knowledge. He's finally going to have a grimoire of his very own. Bells ring out across the magic tower, signaling the start of a major event. Inside, the students realize it's time for the grimoire selection ceremony. The gossip starts immediately. Nobody can believe the new kid already got the right to participate. Some of the guys think it's a joke, convinced a lowly apprentice like him will never be chosen. They've seen others fail before, and they're sure Allan is just going to embarrass himself. The receptionist watches him, wondering if he's actually serious about going through with this. Allan ignores the noise and follows his guide toward the restricted area of the tower. They arrive at the Grimoire Archive, the place where all the masterless books are stored. Lucas Volin stops at the entrance, telling Allan to listen closely to the rules. The process is simple. In there, the grimoire is the one that picks the mage. If he's not compatible, he walks out of there with absolutely nothing. Allan realizes this is his only shot. If he fails, he doesn't get a grimoire at all. Lucas shows him the entry pass, reminding him that the selection isn't guaranteed. The massive doors creak open, revealing a library that looks like it goes on forever. If he leaves empty-handed, he'll have to earn the right to enter all over again. Before he enters, Lucas hands him a strange, golden device. It's a small orb that glimmers with a faint magical light. Suddenly, it sprouts wings and takes off, hovering right in front of him. It's a monitoring tool meant to broadcast his every move to the students outside. Allan is caught off guard by the flying eye, but he quickly regains his composure. Lucas gives him a final nod and wishes him luck before the doors shut. Allan begins his trek through the silent aisles, surrounded by walls of ancient books. The silence is unsettling, and he starts to feel a strange presence following him. Deep in the archive, he can hear the faint sound of something breathing. He looks over the collection, noting that most of these are just regular books, not grimoires. A golden glow starts to leak from the upper shelves, catching his attention. He wonders how he'll actually know if a book has decided to choose him. A sudden noise behind him makes him jump. Something is definitely moving in the shadows. He spins around, catching a glimpse of a dark, smoke-like essence. A massive white wolf spirit emerges from the darkness, a crescent moon glowing on its forehead. The beast lunges at him, forcing him to scramble back to avoid being pinned. Allan sprints through the aisles, trying to put some distance between himself and the spirit. The wolf stops atop a shelf, staring down at him with an overwhelming presence. The crescent mark flares with light, and the entire room begins to vibrate with mana. A massive vortex of magical energy erupts around Allan, turning everything white. The sheer force of the magic sends him flying as he tries to shield his eyes. He hits the floor hard, struggling to stay conscious under the intense pressure. Above him, a crystalline grimoire manifests, glowing with a deep purple aura. The crowd watching outside is in total shock. They've never seen a glow like this. One of the senior mages looks on in disbelief, sensing something truly abnormal. Allan stands back up, the archives glowing with the light of his new book. He reaches out and touches the grimoire, feeling a pulse of mana that feels like a heartbeat. Allan pulls the book close, finally acknowledging the partner that chose him. He can't help but smirk. While the monitoring eye captures his success, he's ready to see what this thing can really do. Master Lucas is impressed. He knew Allan had potential, but this is something else entirely. He didn't expect the kid to be this good this early in the game. Raz and Allan walk back into the library to find the old man waiting for them. Allan proudly presents the book he managed to get his hands on. Lucas smiles, letting them know he was keeping an eye on things the whole time. He takes a look at the grimoire, noting it's an old but high-quality piece. He hands it back, telling Allan he better take good care of it. Then he gestures for them to take a seat because it's time for a serious talk. As Allan sips some tea, his master brings up what he said about receiving a blessing from a spirit creature. He wants Allan to explain exactly what that creature told him. Allan recalls being told he's a child loved by the world itself. He remembers his spirit eyes flaring up. The creature said he sees the world just like they do. And more importantly, it said the 7-star king would guide him to the source of all magic. Lucas sighs, deciding it's time to fill him in, even if it's a lot for a new grimoire smith. He introduces the 7-star kings, 7 of the most powerful and famous spirits in existence. Their legends are known by everyone across the entire continent. Normally, one of these spirits rules over each major territory. Allan looks at the map and points out that there only seem to be 5 of them. Lucas explains that the locations of the last 2 are a mystery, since they move around so much. Raz adds that he and the master have been investigating them for years without finding a trace. Allan brings it back to the big question. What exactly is this source of magic? The master says it's most likely a legendary object from ancient myths. Its name has been passed down through stories for generations. It's supposed to be a stone containing the very first magic born in the world. Finding it could finally uncover the truth about ancient magic. Lucas reminds him that the spirit in the mine specifically told him a 7-star king would be his guide. Allan takes it all in. Lucas thinks it might actually be Allan's destiny to find that stone. Allan looks down at the mana stone he received as a blessing. If this one is this bright, he can't even imagine what the stones held by the kings look like. He looks up at his master, his decision finally made. He's going to become a great grimoire smith and hunt down every 7-star king on the continent. He wants to see every legendary stone with his own eyes. Lucas warns him he'll need to prepare. The master mentions troubling reports of spirit creatures being targeted. A spirit living in hiding in the Stone Guardian lands was recently killed by demons. If Allan pursues the kings, he's going to run into a lot more hostile demons than your average person. To handle that, he needs to become the strongest grimoire smith out there. For a start, the master suggests a practical move, getting his new magical book maintained. He tells them to head down to the workshop district inside the tower. Allan's a bit confused. He didn't even realize books needed maintenance. They find an elf craftsman who's ready to take a look at the grimoire. The elf takes the book and tells Allan to head inside and wait while he gets to work. The craftsman looks over the grimoire, telling Allan he's lucky to have found such a good book. He tells him to treat it with respect. Allan can't stop staring at the guy, his mind fixated on how strange his ears look. Seeing the kid's curious face, the craftsman explains that he's part of the forest folk. They aren't exactly common around here. He adds that working on magic tools and legendary books requires a set of special techniques that humans just haven't mastered yet. He points out that the workshop itself is actually run by stone guardians. Allan looks where he's pointing and sees a stash of raw, unprocessed mana stones just sitting out in the open. He notices a lantern glowing nearby and asks if they use mana stone fragments to power the workshop tools. The craftsman nods. He notices the sparkle in Allan's eyes and asks if the newbie is actually interested in meeting it. Allan mentions he's heard about a spirit creature living in the land of the forest kin. The craftsman confirms it's real and acts as their protector. Allan doesn't hesitate. He really wants to see it for himself. He starts asking about its appearance and what kind of magic it uses. The craftsman laughs and puts a hand up. He's just a simple worker and doesn't know the deep details. However, he knows people who do. Some of the forest folk know more about spirits than anyone else on the continent. He leans in close, telling Allan that for a human mage, he actually smells pretty good. Then, he drops some useful info. A traveling caravan from the forest folk territory is about to arrive, and every single year, they send one incredibly skilled warrior to act as the caravan's escort. Deep in the countryside, that very caravan is currently rolling down the road toward the tower. Lying lazily on the roof of a wagon is the escort, Fran, who clearly finds this whole job to be a massive chore. The coachman calls out that they'll be reaching the magic tower soon. Fran just gives a half-hearted reply. Fran stares up at the sky, wondering what kind of reception is waiting for him at the tower. He thinks back to a guy named Klaus, who was an interesting opponent for a while. But even Klaus couldn't take him and his squad down in the end. Fran stretches his arms out, wondering if there's anyone with actual guts left to fight in this world. Back at the workshop, Allan holds up his grimoire, beaming now that it's been fully maintained and is ready for action. Allan's finally putting the finishing touches on the 7-star orb, and it's looking perfect. Raz pops his head into the workshop to see if the work is finally done. He tells Allan that the traveling merchants market has already kicked off, so they better move. The market is packed with exotic goods and stuff Allan's never even seen before. He stops at one stall and geeks out over a fire wand, realizing the traditional crafts of the forestkin are the real deal. The elf craftsman at the stall mentions there's supposed to be a legendary guardian escorting the caravan this time. Allan looks around, but he doesn't see anyone who actually looks like a high-level guardian. He notices they're even trading live animals, but something about the caged creature feels off. Before he can think about it, a massive explosion rips through the center of the market. The crowd scatters as a Morlock, a giant, horned ape, comes crashing through the stalls. The forestkin warriors are stunned. These beasts are usually timid, so seeing one this aggressive is a nightmare. A group of mages tries to blast it with fire, but they're yelling for more water magic because the flames aren't doing a thing. Allan doesn't hesitate. He opens his grimoire and starts channeling mana. He slams a massive pillar of earth right into the monster, knocking it back with ease. The elven archers nearby can't believe their eyes when they see an apprentice mage stepping up. Allan is completely focused, the power from his grimoire swirling around him like a storm. One of the warriors thanks him for the save but tells him to run, thinking an apprentice is no match for a beast like this. Allan just stares the monster down, ready for the next round. High above on a rooftop, Elle is lounging around, wondering where the slacker she's looking for is hiding. Down below, Allan blocks the Morlock's heavy swing, the impact shaking the ground. He realizes that his casting speed is on a completely different level than it was before. With a simple gesture, he whips up a massive wave of sand that swallows the monster's legs. He's impressed by how effortless it feels to draw power from his own grimoire now. Then, a huge water magic circle opens up in the sky, ready to drop a deluge. He mixes the sand and water into a thick sludge that locks the Morlock in place. The archers are losing their minds. A human shouldn't be able to manipulate the elements like this. The beast is completely pinned, struggling against a trap it can't understand. Allan lets the floodwaters loose, washing over the square and drowning out the chaos. The elves just stand there, wondering how an apprentice could be this powerful. Elle watches the whole spectacle from the rooftops, a smirk playing on her face. Allan follows up with a burst of fire magic to clear the steam and keep the beast down. He spots a glowing weak point on the monster's head and decides to end it right there. A barrage of green energy beams strikes the Morlock, finishing the job. The monster's head is sliced clean off, and the threat is finally over. Suddenly, Elle drops down from above and places a hand on Allan's shoulder, praising his work. She can tell immediately that this kid is in a totally different league from her own kin. She gives him a playful wave, asking if she managed to startle him. The other archers rush over, calling her Shumiel and demanding to know where she's been hiding. She gets a total earful for slacking off while everyone else was getting beaten up. She ignores the yelling and takes a close look at the marks on Allan's arm. Curious, she tells him he's actually pretty strong for a pipsqueak. Then she turns to her fellow warriors and tells them to be ashamed for hiding behind a child. The monster's head doesn't just fall, it dissolves into a thick, black smoke before it even hits the stones. Despite the decapitation, the Morlock's body stays standing, still throbbing with energy from that glowing red core. Allan watches it twitch, realizing that a normal death isn't in the cards for something this corrupted. Elle offers to jump in and back him up, but only if he's got the guts to deliver the final blow himself. She's happy to help, but she makes it clear that her assistance is going to cost him a favor in return. Addressing him as Mr. Guardian, she tells him he'll have to listen to her request once the fighting is over. Standing on the rooftop, she tells him the deal is only on if he manages to finish the beast off for good. Allan agrees, figuring that if he finishes this, he can finally get the answers he needs about the phantom beasts. Allan channels magic from his open grimoire, water spiraling into the air. He prepares a powerful spell, his grimoire glowing with intense energy. A massive burst of water and dark energy erupts in the middle of the square. The swirling magic and debris start to settle after the blast. Allan focuses for another shot while the forest kin stands ready behind him. He fires a torrent of water that slams directly into Malik's monstrous form. From the rooftop, Allan and the elf watch the giant beast struggle against the attack. Allan points out a pulsing black spot on the creature's back and tells him to aim right there. The forest kin narrows his eyes, focusing on the dark core as he draws his bow. A sharp beam of light strikes the core, causing it to erupt with energy. Malik's body begins to bubble and swell with a dangerous red glow. The forest kin shouts for everyone to evacuate as the monster reaches its breaking point. The demon explodes in a massive blast, sending villagers fleeing in all directions. Allan watches the destruction from above, his water magic still swirling around him. A huge whirlpool remains in the center of the town after the explosion. The elves watch the aftermath, hoping the nightmare is finally over. The townspeople immediately start the cleanup, hauling away the wreckage. Allan looks at a red core shard, remembering the horrific experiments he'd seen before. The forest kin grabs Allan in a friendly headlock, laughing about how strong he is. He asks Allan if this is the favor he wanted to talk about. Allan gets straight to the point and asks about the king of the phantom beasts. He bombards the elf with questions, wanting to know everything about the king's power. The forest kin is stunned by Allan's intensity and wonders why he's so obsessed. He sniffs Allan and realizes he carries the scent of a phantom beast. The forest kin decides to share a secret about their worshipped deity. He describes the king of wisdom, a great spirit that knows everything on the continent. He warns Allan to be careful, as the bird spirit might be listening to them right now. The elf stops himself, worried he'll get in trouble for saying too much. He tells Allan that's all he can say for now. If Allan wants to meet the king, he'll have to defeat the guardians at an upcoming festival. Allan repeats the word festival to himself, thinking it over. The forest kin mentions the next festival is 2 years away. Allan pulls out his grimoire and a 7-star orb, challenging him right then and there. The elf is amused but says defeating just him isn't enough to see the king. He walks off, promising to go all out when the actual festival arrives. Allan watches him leave, his determination clearly growing. Klaus calls out to Allan as he approaches the square. The old man holds a red core and asks if it came from the demon. Allan asks if he can be the one to look after it. The forest kin is shocked to see the old man, calling him by name. Klaus looks back at him, seemingly surprised by the recognition. The elf laughs, mocking how the brat he knew has become a total geezer. The forest kin looks back on the last festival, where he fought the 7 guardians, but was ultimately defeated by Lord Shumiel. He asks Klaus if Allan is his new apprentice, acknowledging that the kid is surprisingly strong. He suddenly senses someone annoying approaching, and decides it's time to make a quick exit. Allan yells for him to stay, but the little guy is already losing his chance to ask more questions. The forest kin leaps across the rooftops, shouting back that he'll be waiting in the land of the elves. Allan is disappointed he couldn't ask more, but Klaus pulls his attention back by asking if he really plans to go to the festival. Klaus doesn't sugarcoat it, warning Allan that the guardians are far stronger than he is right now. The old man admits he no longer has the drive to challenge the festival, but he believes Allan might actually have a shot. Allan gives a simple, determined yeah, his gaze fixed on the challenges ahead. He's already picturing the 7-star king, a massive eagle-like spirit he's desperate to meet. A few days later, the silence of the Magic Tower's research lab is heavy with the weight of recent events. Klaus examines the redstone Allan recovered, noting it's made of the same material Malik was experimenting with. He finds it hard to believe the forest kin just brought it in, wondering if someone planted it on purpose. Klaus looks at his apprentice with concern, fearing Allan's journey will be even more brutal than he anticipated. An urgent call interrupts his thoughts, and Klaus's tone becomes sharp as he asks what's happened. The report is devastating. A demon army is marching full force toward the southern city. Back in the lab just before the news broke, Allan was cheering after finally finishing a complex piece of work. He holds up a brilliant blue mana stone, curious about the ancient magic sealed within the Phantom Beast's core. Raz is just as impressed, leaning in to get a good look at what Allan created. He quickly panics though, warning Allan not to activate such a powerful artifact inside the research room. Allan just smiles, placing the stone on a magic circle as it begins to pulse with a blinding, divine light. Allan stares at the glowing blue orb, feeling its massive magical weight, even if he can't quite grasp it. He feels the power slipping right through his fingers, like water. Master Lucas explains that handling ancient magic takes a certain knack. He notes that the more powerful the magic, the more skill is needed to draw it out. Allan realizes the Phantom Beast was right about how difficult it would be to handle. The Tower Master cuts in, saying there's a pressing matter to deal with right now. He reports that a demon army is closing in on the southern city and orders Allan to join the reinforcements. Allan agrees to go, but the Master stops him. He knows Allan is capable, but something about this situation is bothering him. Allan wonders what has the Master so worried. By the next morning, he's back at the tower as sunlight streams through the windows. A messenger reports that the rescue squad has arrived at the city. Allan thinks about his master and the others, wishing he'd forced his way along. He approaches the reception desk but has some trouble with his identification. The receptionist calls his name, catching him off guard. She asks if he's getting used to life at the tower yet. Suddenly, a massive red warning screen fills the hall. A prisoner has escaped. A frantic guard screams for the Tower Master as panic erupts. He clutches his head in despair as the situation spirals out of control. The receptionist tells Allan to just focus on evacuating for now. Allan ignores the order, realizing the killer might still be hiding inside the tower. He creeps through the tower, pushing open a door to a dimly lit room. He demands to know what the stranger is doing there. A man in simple clothes stands alone in the center of the chamber. The old man recognizes Allan, calling him the brat from before. Allan can sense something is dangerously wrong with him. The prisoner speaks of guiding the world back to its rightful state. He laughs, telling Allan he should feel honored to bear witness to what's coming next. He declares his intent to become the new 7-star king. A violent vortex of water explodes from his body. The force of the shockwave blasts Allan across the floor. He groans, skidding across the floor as he hits the ground. He looks up, gasping, as he realizes this monster is Malik. Malik towers over him, his body transformed into a demonic husk with glowing red eyes. Allan isn't about to let him walk away. An emergency alarm blares, telling all grimoire smiths to use their own discretion. Allan activates his grimoire, green mana sparking, as he prepares for battle. Outside, a demon pins a helpless citizen to the ground. Demons are swarming the plaza, lunging at people as they flee in terror. Suddenly, monsters are ripped apart as a wave of power sweeps through the streets. Malik remains arrogant, boasting that he's strong enough to hunt phantom beasts now. He stands over the carnage, basking in the screams as the city begins to burn. Allan stands amidst the roaring flames, his grimoire open and surging with power. With eyes glowing, he tells the demon that he's the one Malik will be facing. He faces Malik, who looms high above on a pillar. The city burns around them as the two prepare for their final showdown. Green mana slashes through the air, shredding the flying demons to bits. Malik floats high above the plaza, looking down at Allan with pure arrogance. He taunts the boy, saying he can't possibly win at his current level. The demon leans in, eyes glowing red as he tells Allan to just beg for his life. Maybe then, he'll give him a quick death. Allan doesn't flinch. He fires back that the one who should be begging is the guy who already lost to him once. Malik isn't amused and sends a wave of debris and mana crashing toward the uncute brat. The Magic Tower mages rush onto the scene, their commander shouting to check if the apprentice is still in one piece. The mages skid to a halt, finally realizing exactly who they're up against. One of them recognizes Malik as the high-profile prisoner who recently escaped. There's no time to waste, and the commander barks out orders for everyone to prep their best spells. Malik just laughs at them, completely unimpressed by a bunch of small fry mages. To show off, he erupts with massive, thorny vines that dwarf everything in the plaza. The mages don't back down, unleashing a combined barrage of fire, water, and light. The elemental attacks slam into Malik, turning the fountain area into a chaotic mess of magic and steam. They keep the pressure on, pelting him with everything they've got, while Allan watches from the sidelines. The magic tears right through Malik, leaving his body full of holes and leaking dark mana. But as the smoke clears, Allan sees a terrifying sight. Malik is grinning, and his wounds are already starting to close. Within seconds, he's completely fine, while the mages are already starting to tire out. Allan bites his lip, realizing that standard elemental magic isn't going to stick. He zeroes in on the pulsing red core in Malik's chest, wondering if this monster is even a demon at all. He notices a few shards of ice still stuck in Malik's shoulder, but even those melt away in an instant. Allan realizes he's been looking at this fight all wrong. Malik isn't finished either, summoning even more vines as he obsesses over his newfound power. Seeing the city trapped in thorns, Allan clenches his fist, his own mana starting to react. Malik raises himself up on a massive pillar of thorns, looking like a dark god looming over the ruins. He holds up a bundle of red glowing thorns, shouting for everyone to behold the true extent of his strength. Lightning strikes from the sky, charging the thorns with a violent burning energy. He's not stopping with the city. He declares that once he's done here, he's going after the phantom beasts next. The mages can only watch in horror, convinced that the human kingdoms are basically finished. But Allan isn't ready to give up. He pulls out a glowing 7-star orb, determined to turn the tide. He tells the demon he's going straight to hell, and he's the one who's going to send him there. Allan charges through the thorns, his eyes focused on the spiritual power he needs to tap into. A thorn grazes him, drawing blood, but he doesn't slow down as his grimoire begins to glow. Malik laughs at the desperate charge, mockingly asking why he stopped his big talk about sending him to hell. In his mind, Allan feels a violent power, like a raging torrent, starting to run wild. A sudden explosion of brilliant blue mana ripples through the air, knocking the thorns back. Allan looks up, finally seeing the path forward. A spectral wolf looms over him. Allan doesn't flinch, asking if the beast is finally ready to help. Back in reality, swirling currents of mana encircle him like a storm. He slots the orb into his grimoire, the ancient book pulsing with an intensity that outshines everything else. It's a massive amount of power to handle, but Allan grits his teeth, determined to master it right here and now. The orb clicks into place, and Allan lets out a confident smirk as the ritual completes. A massive DNA-like spiral of mana erupts, shooting straight into the clouds. Malik is forced to shield his eyes, his arrogance replaced by pure shock as he realizes the brat just unleashed something god-tier. The mages can only stand there in shock, wondering what on earth is happening as the massive pillar of light continues to grow. With his eyes glowing a celestial gold, Allan looks straight ahead and declares that he's going to seize his own future. Suddenly, a colossal ethereal whale erupts from the mana, looming over the entire city and completely dwarfing everything on the battlefield.